Hey everyone, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at a new product that I just got and something that I'm really excited to finally have my hands on, and that is the ArcDroid from 2AM Innovations. They had a really great Indiegogo campaign and units are finally shipping out, and this is one of the first 100 I think or so. So what I want to do today is just sort of give you an initial overview of what comes with it, maybe a few tips and tricks and an overview of doing your first calibration, because that's a little bit tricky, especially right now until they sort out a few more issues. But anyway, we'll get into all that. And yeah, we'll just sort of take an initial look at this, what it comes with, how it operates, and why I think that this thing is a really great machine, and I hope to get lots of use out of it. So, okay, let's dive right into it. Okay, so first things first, let's look at what the unit comes with. So in the box, you'll have the ArcDroid in the center. You'll have the control screen, and that's going to have an Ethernet port, and your USB stick will go in there. This does not come with a USB stick, but it does come with a little Cat6 Ethernet cord, and that'll connect into your unit. It comes with, and all this stuff here is in a separate bag, but it'll come with your little sled here for calibration, and the now notorious switch that breaks on some people. It comes with a power cord and, of course, a little sheet and some stickers, and your calibration triangle, which you have to assemble. And we'll just look at that very quickly, I guess, before anything else, because there are no assembly instructions that come with this, at least not at this point, and I don't know, maybe that's something in the future that they're going to do. So you have to be a little bit intuitive. You can go watch the videos, and if you pause it in certain spots, you can get a look at things like the calibration triangle to figure out how this thing goes together. So all of these rails have numbers on them. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a 1, there's a 2, and 3. 3 is your long one. So these long, if I can get it all on the screen here, yeah, these long sections that stick out that have the sort of rounded bits on them, those are the parts that'll go in towards the machine. So those have to be on the same end, and then rail 2 goes in between them. That's about the most basic way to describe it. And then that will always sit sort of like so. It locks in on the front of the machine here. There are some little indentations that those pieces fit into. Now we're going to cover a little bit more about that in a minute here. So then also in the package, you'll have two different holders that have these nice little clamps on them and stuff. And these are your carriage, to go on your carriage. One's for the stylus and the other one hooks to your torch. We'll take a look at that one in a minute because I have it actually hooked up to my torch. But see if we can get this to focus here. There we go. So that's the stylus. Okay, so over here on this side of the unit, I'll just go over the ports, I guess, first. There is a USB port here. There's your Ethernet connection. There's a micro SD card slot, and then there's a 3.5mm jack. So that 3.5mm jack, that will either be for your stylus, that has a TRRS connector, so that can plug in there, or when you're doing your calibration, our little sled, that will plug in there, and you'll get those notifications on the screen. So when you go to hook this thing up, pretty basic. There are little caps on this Ethernet cable. You just go and plug that in there, plug it into the screen, and you're good to go. And you should also have a USB stick. If anybody's not familiar with it, a good starting point if you're just going to go out and buy one is a 16 gigabyte USB 2.0. They tend to work with everything, 3D printer or CNC related. Usually a pretty safe bet, as long as it's not a really dirt cheap one. But other ones will work. I'm using a 32 gigabyte SanDisk USB 3 data traveler stick, and that works absolutely fine. So one of the first things I want to mention is after you get the unit powered on and you're ready to do your first calibration, before you do that, I would very highly recommend checking these arms, because one of the problems I had that threw me into a whole bigger set of issues was actually one of the pulleys for the stepper motor for the shorter arm. The set screws had actually loosened up a little bit, probably in shipping or whatever. And because of that, I was losing steps. And one of the main issues, or at least early on here, one of the big issues seems to be that if you get a bad calibration to start off with, it's very difficult to get things back on the rails. But we're going to go over how you can deal with that and how you can get things back to a 0 point. But so anyway, what you want to do is you want to go into terminal, and you want to put these arms at about 90 degrees to each other, wherever that is, there anywhere in about the center. And you want to type in M17 and then press send, and that should lock these arms in place. And what you want to do at that point, this obviously isn't locked right now, but you want to push on each of these arms, and you want to make sure that they're not going to move, that they're sort of locked in place. Now, you will get a little bit of movement on them, but they should feel fairly solid with just a little bit of sponginess to them. If these arms move like that at all, then you've probably got a loose pulley, and you'll have to take the cover off to tighten that up. So something I would like to cover about the calibration, make sure that you clamp your machine down. So I'm using a fixture table here, so I just put a clamp on this side. Be careful about putting one on the other side, because when it goes to do its home, you could end up hitting it. So you need either a low profile clamp or something that's not going to get in the way of that arm homing. I found that one over here was actually good enough. And then you may want to clamp down your triangle as well, even if it is in these little indents. And I just used a couple pieces off the fixturing table, or if you had a low profile clamp, again, you could get it in here, because you got to remember that you got to be able to bring this arm over and run that sled across there, so you can't have anything that's going to impede your path, because it's already difficult enough when you get to the torch section of doing this to orchestrate everything. So I just clamp it down with those in the fixture table, and that worked well. But again, if you had a low profile clamp, you could get right in there. And I would clamp it on this side, and I would clamp it on the other side as well, with something low profile over there, just so that you don't get any movement. Okay, so I'll leave you to go through your calibration procedure the way that Andrew shows it on the video there, the ArcDroid video on YouTube. Perfect. It's as simple as that when it goes well. If you end up in trouble, and there are issues, and we're going to go over some of those issues, there's a set of procedures that you can go through to sort of reset this thing and get back to a good calibration. Because like I said earlier, if you end up with a bad calibration, then things are going to be all sorts of wonky. Stuff won't show up square to the grid on the screen. Your measurements are going to be way off. On your calibration triangle, your 313, they won't be accurate, and it'll be different every time you start up and home the machine. There will be no sort of rhyme or reason as to why it's doing what it's doing. So if things go desperately wrong, you don't have a good calibration, and it just keeps failing to run, you get bad results, and everything's all askew. These are the steps that you can go through to sort of reset things. You go into your menu, and you go into machine settings, and you scroll all the way to the bottom, and it says reset default settings. So you'll push that, and it'll reset, it'll beep and show you a little thing that it's reset. Then you need to go back into that again, and here at the top you see steps per millimeter. You need to go into there, and you're going to have to reset Z. That'll reset to 400. That needs to be set to 200. Okay, and then you back out. Once you do that, then you want to go into G-code terminal, and you want to type in G28K and send. And the machine is going to go, and it's going to home, and it's going to lock the arms in the home position. Then you would just want to do a power cycle. Off and back on. So after doing your reset and doing that, that should give you a clean slate. You should be able to run your calibration from there and get good results. Now, if you're still having problems, especially a lot of people seem to be having problems with rail 2. This rail right here, in close to the machine, that seems to be the one that's causing people most of the problems when they're trying to calibrate. And I had an issue with this, and it took me a little while to get there because of all the other problems I was having. So I ended up calling up Andrew, and he was very helpful with this. And he mentioned that he thought some of the problems were being generated because in the calibration routine, when you're going through, there is a set leeway parameter for the machine to move along and measure and capture those values. And as it's measuring, if it gets a value that's outside of that leeway zone that it has, it will not capture them, even though you can see the switch triggering on the screen. So, and I'm not sure whether it's because the dimensions of the base plate for this machine, where these tabs are, if that's off, or it is a firmware issue. It can obviously be corrected in the firmware, which he said is an update's probably coming sooner than later. But what he mentioned is just spacing this triangle a 1/4 inch on the Y direction, so this direction, just spacing that a 1/4 inch off and then trying to run the routine. As soon as I did that, calibration routine ran perfect the first time. I got a really good calibration, you know, within like 0.4 of a millimeter on the Y-axis and 0.15 millimeter on the X-axis. And everything worked as it should. It was really easy to perform that calibration as opposed to all the other ones I had done. So what I did in order to do that is I just got a 1/4 inch piece of steel. This isn't 1/4 inch, but I've got it right here. And I just put it in there, spaced this one off, and clamped that in place. And did exactly the same thing on the other side. Clamp that in place, then pull your steel out, because with this clamp down, it should be good and solid. Then you can run your calibration routine very easily, and it should take. Now, once you're done, exactly as he describes in the video, you want to measure from this point here, where rail 1 and 2 come together, you want to measure over to here, and that should be 313 millimeters, and then from there to there should be 313 millimeters, and actually draw the lines and hit closed on the thing so it forms a triangle, and see if it's square to the grid. If it is, great, and then you can come back and set your offset up like maybe 5 millimeters or so, and actually run this as a trace. Get it to go on the center line, and it should follow along perfectly, and then you should know that you have a good calibration. So something I may have forgot to mention in that whole thing, after you do your calibration, you run through the routine, you should go back to your terminal, G-code terminal, and type in G28K again, hit send, and again, that'll home it and lock the arms in position. Then you want to do a power cycle, and when it comes back on, hit the home button again, and it'll re-home. Then you can do your 313 millimeter measurement to these points, and you should be good. I found several times when I was still having issues, when I did get one good calibration there, if I didn't do G28K again and power cycle and then rehome it, it would still look wonky and all messed up on the screen. Even though I did have a good calibration, it wouldn't apply to the machine until I did that rehoming. So that may be relevant to you, it may not. But anyway, something to watch out for. So I will say that all those problems that I just mentioned, those are just sort of an initial thing. I have every confidence after speaking with Andrew that they're going to solve all these issues, probably in the next firmware update or two. But you know, don't get discouraged. It seems like it's a lot more complicated than it really is. But like I say, just make sure that you check that your arms are solid, meaning that there's no loose pulley inside. And as long as you don't have that issue, I imagine your calibration will run fine. And if it doesn't for some reason, definitely do the reset procedure and try spacing this calibration triangle off from the machine a 1/4 inch. And that should solve most of your problems. Torch on and run. There we go. Definitely got to get my settings dialed in, but at least it is rectangular in shape. I'll have to check the dimensions on it, but it looks to be about right. A little bit of wobble sort of in the torch, so again, I just got to get my settings figured out and sort of go from there. But that's front side, that's back side, so I'd say that's a success for the calibration anyway, getting that all sorted out. And this little piece here didn't turn out that great, so we'll have to keep working at it. But anyway, that's initial setup and first 2 test cuts.